Thank you for joining us today. Welcome to our Watershed Advisory Committee meeting. I'm going to turn it over to Myron Borcherds to begin. Myron.
Thank you, John. Welcome everybody to the Watershed Advisory Committee on today, October 13th. We're glad you could join us. This second Watershed Advisory Committee for 2020 is being done via Zoom. Just a couple of housekeeping. As we go through the presentations, feel free to ask questions in the chat box. Keith McClintock, our manager for Stormwater program, will be keeping an eye out on any questions. We do ask that you hold your questions for the end of the presentation, so maybe just make a note on the side if you need to remember your question. And then I will be introducing the panelists right now. So for today, again, my name is Myron Borcherds. I'm your Watershed team leader, and I will be starting off the meeting. Then we'll hand it over to Frank Greenland, who's the director of the Watersheds program or department. Then Keith McClintock is on the call with us. Kevin Fries, he is the planning manager for the Cuyahoga County Office of Emergency Management, and he'll be presenting on their program for us today. Kim Kolish, manager of Stormwater Design, is on the call with us. Lila Zatner is on the call with us. She's the project manager for property acquisition, and she'll be presenting to us an update on our property acquisition program. Mark Link, manager of SWIM, Stormwater Inspection and Maintenance team, will be presenting on the SWIM activities. Matt Shaver is the assistant director of the Watersheds department. He's on the call with us. Michael Blair, project manager for stormwater projects. He will be presenting on the Rocky River Stormwater Master Plan. And then lastly, Paul Kowalczyk, who is our stormwater specialist, will be presenting on some of the new programs that we have to introduce to you. On the attendee side, just want to mention some other folks from the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District that joined our call. We have 30 attendees, and I'll just quickly go through that because we're not introducing ourselves at this meeting. And Roberto, and if I miss you, I'm sorry, CJ Onyek, Dave Ritter, Donna Friedman, George Remus, Jeff Jowett, John Bauer, Kelsey Amidon, sorry, Kelsey. Nicole Valise, and that's it. Welcome to you all. Just on the agenda for today, we're going to go over the sewer district updates. I will do that. Then we'll look at the Stormwater Master Plan, Stormwater Inspection and Maintenance Program, and Kevin Fries will present for us on the Cuyahoga County Office of Emergency Management. And then we'll talk a little bit about our stormwater design and construction projects and a look ahead. I'm going to hand it over to Frank Greenland, our Director of Watersheds Department, to give us an update on the watershed programs.
Okay, I want to thank everyone for attending. We've got really great attendance. I'm going to be very brief. I wanted to talk about budget issues, 2020, 21, and then into the future. It's been a very challenging year for all of us, but I think that the program has worked extremely well, and we've had some pretty challenging storms. So the interaction with the communities has been great. We have concerns. Our finance group has concerns about budget for this year. We were asked to take $6 million out of our budget. So obviously that slowed down some design and construction projects. We are currently in the budget phase for next year, and we'll know early next year how we're going to allocate stormwater revenue towards projects. We're also in the middle of a rate study. 2021 is the last year of our previous 5-year rate cycle. So we are in an active rate study phase to establish sewer rates and stormwater fees for the 2022 through 26 period. And we'll see where that leads us, and at future WAC meetings we can talk about that. We had 2 big storms this year that created big problems and a lot of debris. In terms of the amount of debris we had to pull following the March storm, and again on Labor Day, those were the top 2 amounts in cubic yards removed since the program began. So that was significant, and we were running around all over the place. Those storms are significant when you look at our stream gauge network, particularly the Cuyahoga and Big Creek. 2 of the top 10 storms of all time in their periods of record. Now the Cuyahoga period of record is very long. Big Creek, not quite as long, but it's been in operation in some form for a number of years. Both of those storms, the March storm and the Labor Day storm, are in the top 10. So that is very significant. And when you start looking at how many storms are in the top 10 in the last, say, 15 years of record for the Cuyahoga, it's 7 of the top 10 peak stages are in the last 15 years. So that's indicative of what's going on. So it's a big challenge for all of us. I think you're going to continue to see these types of events, peaky storms. We've got a lot of rain. We're about 10 or 11 inches over normal this year. I don't expect it to stop anytime soon. So we've just got to be very vigilant in what we do and look for opportunities to do good things, both on the maintenance side and starting to correct problems. So again, I thank you for attending. Myring, I don't know how you're even going to conduct questions and answers as we go forward. I would take any if we're in that mode. If we're not, that's fine. I can just stop now.
Anybody, if you have any questions, you can type them in the chat box at the bottom of your screen. Keith McClintock will let us know if there's any questions coming up. Any questions right now for Mr. Greenland? Frank, I'm not seeing any coming in, so.
Good. Okay, proceed.
Thank you very much. Next. Thank you, John. Right, I just wanted to do a couple of our updates. The first one up is our community cost share program for 2020. Just wanted to give everybody on the call an update of where we are on those. Our community cost share fund balance as of September 31st is just over 29,700,000. We've had 82 projects with executed agreements done now at using about $8.4 million. 31 projects with agreements in progress. So these are the ones that we are still working on and in progress with $3.4 million. Our community cost share funds available to member communities is 17.8 million. So don't be afraid to send your Watershed team leader your needs for your community, because we do have funds to expend for you. And then 21 projects have allocation agreements. Those are the ones that are over a period of more than a year or 2 years, usually about 5 years. And we have $9.8 million in the allocation agreements. And the good news is all 55 of our member communities have to date participated in the community cost share program. Next. A quick update for you on our local sewer system evaluation study. Top right of your screen is the Heights Hilltop Interceptor study that has been completed. All the reports have been given to the communities, and they are actively working on prioritizing how they want to implement those alternatives that were given for the problem areas. The Mill Creek Interceptor is the green area. Those final reports are with the district right now. We are going through the final reports from the consultant and making sure we are in agreement with them, and then they will go out after that. The Southwest Interceptor, we are in phase 2 for that. Basically, we have identified all the problem areas and we are working on all the solutions or alternatives right now with our consultant. Look for those alternatives to come to you in the new year. Be sure if you have any questions on where your community is with the Southwest Interceptor, which is most of the Rocky River folks, make sure you give me a call or an email and I can give you an update with the project manager for the Southwest Interceptor study. The Cuyahoga Valley Interceptor, that one we are working on the final reports and the final hydraulic analysis. That's all being drafted as we speak, and we should be getting those to you for review here shortly as well. Next. Update for you on the 2021 fiscal year Member Community Infrastructure Program. Our funding was reduced, unfortunately, due to a loss of between $40 and $50 million in revenue during 2020 due to the pandemic. And as mentioned by Mr. Greenland, unfortunately, we had to reduce the amount of projects that we had. We had some great applications from all of you for the 2021 MCIP fiscal year. But unfortunately, we only had 2.5 million available to us. We selected 7 projects out of the all the projects that we received to be funded for 2021. 3 of them were design and construction projects, and 4 of them were design-only projects. Next. So the 7 projects that made the cut for the 2.5 million that we had available, the top 3 lines were for design and construction. So South Euclid, Maple Heights, and Lorraine County Commissioners were successful. Those were the top 3 scoring projects for design and construction. And then for the design-only projects, we had the top 4 money for the top 4 projects, 1 in East Cleveland, 1 in Shaker Heights, and 2 in the city of Parma. Next slide. So future funding for the Member Community Infrastructure Program. And as you know, this was the last year of the 5-year cycle for the Member Community Infrastructure funding that was approved by the Board of Trustees. We are hoping and anticipating that the funding will pick up again for the fiscal year 2022. Right now, the level of funding will be determined by the 2021 rate study. We are currently busy with the rate study, and so as we go through that process, we are looking at making sure that there is funding put aside for supporting the Member Community Infrastructure Program. And our wish list will include to do design and construction projects and design-only projects. So the same as we did this year, we heard back from the communities, and they were very thankful for having the opportunity to apply for a design and construction, and some to apply for just design-only grant funding. So just so you know where you are in the watershed and which one of the 3 watershed team leaders is your point of contact. The area in red is myself. The area in blue will be Donna Friedman, and the area in mustardy yellow is Jeff Jowett. So if you have any questions about your community cost share funds, how much you have, how to spend it, some ideas of how to spend it, make sure you communicate with your watershed team leader. If you have any other questions about the program, the stormwater program, or any other of the activities that the district perform in your community, please don't hesitate to reach out to your watershed team leader. Thank you. Right, and at this stage, any questions from any of the participants? Keith, did we get any questions in? Nope, not at this stage. So our special feature for we have two special features for this October Watershed Advisory Committee meeting. The first one is going to just be from, Lila, our project manager for property acquisition. She's going to update us on the acquisition, demolition, and property ownership within the communities. And then Paul Kowalczyk, our stormwater project specialist, will be discussing our partner grant support request process that we will be moving along with in 2021. Lila, it's all yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. As Myron said, my name is Lila Zotner. I'm the project manager for property acquisition. I've been with the district now 1.5 years. I met many of you last year around this time when I presented. I just want to go over a little bit about property acquisition. We have 2 slides for you. You can read for yourself the goals and our successes on the left-hand side, but I wanted to make sure that everyone is aware of our acquisition process. This is the process that we use for the fee simple purchase of properties and for easements as well. So to begin our process for acquisition, we start with outreach. This is where we have a conversation with you, and that generally goes through myself and or our watershed team leaders. We discuss land assembly, our goals, your expectations for maintenance and demolition throughout the process. Our next step is that we assign a consultant. Currently, we work with 3 consultants. We work with OR: Western Reserve, and West Creek Land Conservancy. Those consultants are representatives in the field. They are the ones generally out there knocking on doors and working with us on strategic implementation that's necessary for longer term assembly. Once we have someone that is interested in selling and he has verbally agreed to kind of go down the process with us, we order an appraisal. That's through a third party. We also do an appraisal review through another third party. That results in a fair market value offer. The offer is then presented generally in writing to an interested resident. If they do decide to take the offer, then we get that signed purchase agreement and take it through our board. Every property transaction that the district does get approved by our board of directors. After that, it goes into a fairly traditional closing. If the people are ready to move out at that time, they do. In most cases, they aren't quite ready to move out, so we do offer a lease. Our leases are generally about 6 months. They are no cost, so they can stay in the home for free. They do have to pay their utilities and other expenses and maintenance while they're in the home. Once they're ready to move out, we do a move out inspection that's done by our consultants. And then the property is secured and inspected. Generally, they're inspected about every 3 weeks. That's an internal inspection as well as external. During that time, it's then maintained by our swim departments. We generally mow and do some basic landscaping maintenance. And the property is kept secure, and again, it's inspected every 3 weeks. Eventually, it then is demolished. We tend to batch our demolitions if we know that we're going to have more than one house in a neighborhood that's going to be coming down. In terms of demolition, we work with the Cuyahoga Land Bank. They are our contractor, and the land bank is responsible for working with the communities on the permitting and anything else that's necessary to do a demolition in a specific neighborhood. Once a property is demolished, then we have the land. In that case, we will often do a small water resource project that aligns with our regional stormwater program, or it's just maintained as a vacant lot while we continue to do our land assembly. So far, this has been a very successful program. To date, we've purchased 41 properties, fee simple, and 86 permanent easements for a total investment of $8.5 million. Next slide, please, John. Thank you. I was asked to show, to highlight one of our larger assembly projects. This is the Hemlock Creek Bank Stabilization Project in Seven Hills. The project seeks to realign a section of Hemlock Creek so that we can improve storage, conveyance, and reduce erosion along this section. The area went through a conceptual design in 2018, and then in 2019, land assembly began. As you can see on the map, this is quite a large area with a lot of property interests. To date, we've acquired 9 of the 12 privately owned residences, and we've demolished 6 of them. The remaining 3 will be demolished over the next couple months as people move out. Looking at the map, you can see the properties that we have acquired are in red. The blue property is the one that was most recently approved by our board. The purple properties are properties that we are interested in but have not yet purchased. And the properties outlined in green are going to be easement interests. The easements in a project will generally come after the fee simple acquisitions. Throughout this process, it's been a great partnership with the City of Seven Hills, mutually beneficial. We have partnered up to allow them access to homes as people move out and they are situated for demolition. We are allowing access to emergency services. So the Seven Hills Fire Department, as well as the regional SWAT team, have both been training in these properties, again, right before they're demolished. With these acquisitions complete, we are now done with phase 1 of our assembly. We're now planning to begin design on phase 1, and while that moves forward, we will then start phase 2 of the land acquisition. The total investment to date in this Seven Hills project area is $2.4 million. And when we are finished, give or take, we'll probably be around $3.1 million. Thank you, John. Next, I'll go ahead and introduce my colleague, Paul Kowalczyk.
Thanks, Lila. Thanks, John. Oh, we could stay on the first slide, but we can go to this one. That's fine. In the past, we've often used stormwater funds to help leverage state and federal grant money for projects that benefit the regional stormwater system. Specifically, we've made it a practice to provide match funding for grant projects. This includes, but not limited to, 319, Sustain Our Great Lakes funding, Clean Ohio funding, coastal management grants, and the like. For 2021 and beyond, we've decided to formalize the process for distributing matching grant or matching money for grants. So we've designated $500,000 in matching stormwater funds available for grant funded projects in 2021. Next slide, please. If you are requesting match funding from the district, we'd like people to limit their request to $300,000 per project. Next slide. The application project is relatively simple. We'd like to see a good project summary with anticipated outcomes, a cost estimate with some line items and unit costs with the total cost, a concept graphic showing the work area, hopefully along the regional stormwater system, and the dollar amount you're requesting from the district. You can use the project summary sheet from an existing 9-element plan for non-point source implementation strategies as a template if you wish, if you have one. We'd like to see a little more detail if this is for 319 funding. And this is actually required if you're going after 319 funding. And then email it to me. Next slide. Email it to me by the end of 2020 is what we'd like to see from you. And our goal is to review these and let you know of our decision by mid-February 2021. Next slide, please. I'll read this one. We'll nominate each application to our stormwater construction plan and rank them in our normal ranking system. And of course, the funding would be distributed according to rank. We can be available to assist with developing concepts, sediment and nutrient budget estimates, costs, and other things for general technical support. But this does not make you any give you any more chance of being awarded, I should say, or does not guarantee an award from the district. We can provide in-kind services even if the district funds are not awarded for the grant. And the projects must include design and construction that result in improvements to the district's regional stormwater system. And I will reiterate that we'd like to see this as leveraging outside dollars. We're not looking to fund projects outright with this funding. So if you have any questions, feel free to post them now for myself and or Lila, or feel free to contact us via phone or email. Thanks.
Alrighty. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for the opportunity to present to you today the Stormwater Master Plan section for the Rocky River Watershed. If we can go to the next slide. First thing I'd like to do is give you a status of where we are with the Stormwater Master Plan studies that are being performed within the the district stormwater service area. Overall, 2020 has been a significant year. The main reason for that is that we've actually completed 2 of the master plan studies that we've been working on for the past couple of years here. Back in July of this year, we completed the River North master plan. And we have actually completed, as of August 30th, the end of August, excuse me, the Rocky River master plan. And I'll explain that 96% complete that you see down below there in a second here. The last master plan that we're currently working on is the Chagrin River and Lake Erie Direct Tributaries master plan. We have essentially completed all the data collection. We are deep into the woods with the development of the swim models for the subwatersheds in the study area. And we're actually getting into identifying those problem areas and starting to come up with alternative solutions for those areas as well. Right now as part of this particular study. But if we can go to the next slide, we'll kind of just go specifically into the master plan for this subwatershed. At this time, as I mentioned, we have completed the stormwater master plan study for the Rocky River watershed. The study elements were brought over to the district the 1st of September of this year. And what we've received is the final stormwater master plan report itself for all the subwatersheds. We have also received the community reports that basically provide a summary of the overall master plan study. It identifies the problem areas within each of the communities and also identifies the preferred alternative for the related to that problem area, and provides a nice summary for each of the communities within the study area that are within our stormwater service area. And I'll talk a little bit at the end about how that might relate to your particular community. In addition to that, we've received the inspection and maintenance action plan. That's primarily for our stormwater inspection and maintenance group so that they know, it basically provides an instrument to know when to go out to inspect various assets. It also provides us an idea of when we expect end of life estimates for our various assets as well, for example, with culverted streams and the like. And then finally, we are basically just wrapping up getting all the electronic data deliverables from our our study consultant so that we can have those available as we go on and move these projects to design and construction and also out to our community members. At this time, as a result of the completion of the study, we have identified 121 problem areas with planning level recommendations that we're ready to share with all of our community members. Now, I mentioned the overall study is completed, but the contract itself will not be completed until the end of November of this year. And the reason for that is that we had a little bit of extra money left over. And so what we've asked the consultant to do is to do some additional bathymetric surveys of 16 basins within the regional stormwater system. And that's basically going to help support the results that we've found with the stormwater master plan itself. If we go to the next slide, please. And what I wanted to briefly show you is kind of the distribution in one way of the problem areas that we've seen, and problem areas as opposed to standalone projects. Problem areas are where we have a great number of building, transportation, utility assets that are impacted by either flooding erosion or water quality problems, as alone to standalone projects where you may essentially just have one BTU that's affected. So we kind of broke it up into that area. As you see, overall see in the table here is that probably to be expected is that the east branch of the Rocky River probably has the most overall problem areas and the largest as far as estimated costs, but there's a pretty good, essentially all the sub-watersheds we were able to identify either problem areas or standalone projects in this area. And for the total cost for all these problem areas and standalone projects, we're estimating that we're going to have over $275 million worth of work to do here. Unfortunately, this is not essentially all the work that we're going to take alone. We are going to be, working with our community members to try and whittle this down because we cannot do all this on our own, so to speak. If we go to the next slide. So what we're currently doing is that we've taken, now that we've gotten all the project areas identified, we have preferred alternatives identified for each one of those as well. What we're doing right now is taking those stormwater master plan recommendations along with other projects that have been identified by either a member community or a watershed group. And right now we're going through the nomination process. So we've actually taken all the Rocky River problem areas and standalone project areas. We're taking those recommended solutions and they're going through the nomination process right now. We're currently working on validating those. So we're checking what the findings were with our other departments, for example, with the Stormwater Inspection Maintenance Group or with communities and such. And then we're actively going through that and starting to score these projects to see if they score high, that they might be considered for the construction plan, or if they score low, they may not be something that we'll put on next year's construction plan, but we could possibly reach out to the community members or the watershed groups and see how we might be able to get those projects moved along as well. So we're expecting to basically have the nomination prioritization process done by the end of this year. We'll take those highest scores and develop or finalize the stormwater construction plan. That'll go to our board in March for approval, and then that will become the construction plan for 2021. If we go to the next slide, please. So we do actually have several projects that have been identified in the Rocky River Master Plan that have actually moved along as far as design and construction. Primarily, these were ones that were identified by the first subwatershed that we looked at as part of this overall study, and that was Abrams Creek. So we have 3 projects that are involved with that subwatershed. The first one is the Abram Creek detention basins that are going to be built near the Big Creek Waterway in Middleburg Heights between Smith and Bagley Road. This project, we're working with the city of Middleburg Heights and using their community cost share with supplemental funds from the district. And we're actually going to be putting in 3 detention basins to raise that level of service along the parkway there. Currently, it's less than the 10-year, and we're actually, with these 3 basins, going to be able to bring that level of service up to nearly the 10-year for the 10-year storm event, which the community and the city hall there is really happy about. The next thing we're working on is a number of debris and trash racks in the service area, and one of those is actually going to be the debris rack replacement over by Hopkins Airport. That's also part of the Abrams Creek subwatershed. And then finally, for this subwatershed, we're also going to be looking at, we're currently working on the design for the Sheldon Road Bridge replacement, which is on the border between Brook Park and Middleburg Heights at this time. Finally, we are working with the city of Strongsville. They're taking the lead on replacing the culvert underneath Route 82 or Royalson Road. That's in design at this point. If we can go to the next slide, please. Now, as we go through the nomination process, there are some of these projects, when we take a look at them and they go through the process, that they might need some additional advanced planning. So this year we did award a advanced planning contract to an outside firm. And basically this planning is to help support the implementation of both the construction plan And it's with the goal of getting some of these really large projects ready for full design. So the projects that we might be talking about here are projects that we've identified in the master plan that have some very complex components. That could either be the larger number of either property acquisitions or easements we might need to get for particular projects. The project might be located in an area where we have a lot of different stakeholders. Let's say, for example, we have stakeholders like the city of Millbrook Heights and also the Cleveland Metro Park. So we have multiple communities and then the Metro Parks. And this is just coordinating how we would work with the community groups, see and talk to them about what their stakeholder plans are for the area, so that we make sure that we do this in cooperation with those groups to see that this is a successful design and construction project. There are also going to be certain projects that are just going to be cost prohibitive without doing phasing. I'm going to show you one in Parma where we have this particular issue. And then there are going to be some that just require some additional information to understand the full impact of this project on the regional stormwater system. So what I'd like to do is show you one of the problem areas. This is in the Baldwin Creek subwatershed in the city of Parma. This project area is located along West Pleasant Valley Road in and just to the west of its intersection with York Road. What we've identified here in the master plan is that we have primarily a flooding issue. We are flooding approximately 59 building, transportation, and utility assets along this corridor. And we actually have erosion impacting 6 of the building portion of those BTUs. Finally, as far as the problem area, issues as well, is that the culverted stream of Baldwin Creek that goes underneath the intersection of these 2 streets is basically structurally having some structural problems. It's a bit undersized with the amount of waters being directed into this culvert, so we need to address that as well. So the overall project goals is that we've actually selected the alternative that was recommended by the study consultant to move forward in this process. And what we're looking to do is to improve the storage and conveyance in this area and increase the level of service while reducing the hydraulic performance and structural risk that we have associated with this problem area. So if we can go to the next slide. So in this area, what's basically happening is that Baldwin Creek is coming from the lower right-hand portion of this figure here. It starts to enter the culvert just to the southeast of the intersection here. And because of both some structural issues and the undersizing of that culvert, we start to get surface flooding affecting that intersection. And as it goes out of that culvert to the southeast portion, we have a large number of homes that have built pretty close to the stream itself, and we have both flooding of either garages or first floors of these buildings or the homes, and then we also have some erosion issues that are taking place along there as well. So what's been proposed as far as the alternative for this is that first of all we want to add some additional storage in this area to try and relieve the hydraulic pressures they're dealing with that culvert. So in this case, what we're looking to do in the northeast portion of this figure, we're looking at putting a detention basin in that'll pick up the stormwater runoff from the residential area just to the northeast there and kind of gradually feed that into the culvert itself. We're also looking at trying to divert the Baldwin Creek with a second culverted stream that would bring that from the southeast to the southwest and purchase 8 homes at the opening of that new culvert where we can widen the floodplain there and provide both some additional storage and slow the flows down there as well. Then further downstream, we're looking at some targeted acquisition of some of the residential homes and doing some of the upsizing of several of the crossings from some of those side streets that feed into West Pleasant Valley. So there's a lot of work to be done here, and to give you an idea of the overall cost, we're looking at something above $11 million. So this is a significant amount of money that we would be trying to take on with our design and construction budget on an annual basis. So if we go to the next slide. So what our objective is that we are going to accept the recommended alternative for this particular problem area. We want to confirm that the properties that we've identified for either easements or acquisitions for the widening of the floodplain or for the installation of that basin is that they're actually going to be available and that they're actually usable for that purpose. We're also going to, again, review and consider the level of service goals and see how we can maximize the amount of benefits versus the cost of this overall recommendation. And specifically, we want to try and break down this overall preferred alternative into manageable projects that we can then take and go through the prioritization and get this through to do design and construction. Next slide. Now, again, I've mentioned early on that we received all the study materials from the consultant for the Stormwater Master Plan for the Rocky River. A lot of this information is available to you as community members. So for example, a lot of you, if not all of you, have access to our GIS system. And as part of that, if you go on there and you click on the reference polygons, you could basically be able to pull up all the CCTV video and PAC reports for the culverted stream sections within the Rocky River Watershed. We also have the spherical imagery of all the open streams. So if you want, you can actually click on that and you could do essentially like a Google Street View, we'll call it a Google Stream View, of all the open sections of streams that are on the regional system in your community. We also have in there all the inspection reports and inventories of the RSS crossings in the subwatersheds. And then specifically, we do have the swim models available for the subwatersheds as well. The district is going to be we are putting together a management program right now to manage all these models and to make them available to our community members, or if they hire a consultant to do a particular project, we'll work with them to get the SWIM model to that project, to that consultant, and then work with them that once that particular project is done, if the model's been upgraded, we like to get that back. We'll do a QA/QC of the upgrades that have been done to the model, and then upgrade that into the overall SWIM model. So we can basically treat this as a living document that'll be good for the next user to have. Finally, we did receive community reports for each of the communities from our consultant, and I know that Myring's been getting those out to each of the communities, either through ShareFile or we've actually mailed you a USB port that actually has a community report available to you. And there's also hyperlinks in that community report that'll get you over to the overall Stormwater Master Plan that relates to your community. So you can go back and forth between the two reports. So next slide. Alrighty, well, thank you very much for your time today. Hope you found this interesting. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. And
do we have any questions from the audience?
I do not see any.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, again, I'd like to thank everybody for your time. What I'll do next is hand the program over to Mark Link, who's the manager of the Stormwater Inspections and Maintenance Group. Mark, it's all yours.
Thanks, Mike, and good afternoon, everyone. So today I'm going to cover 4 areas of the SWIM program. I'll start off with our 2020 inspections, move on to our 2020 maintenance projects, talk to you a little bit about our recent culverted stream inspections, and then I'll highlight some findings from the recent Labor Day wet weather event that Frank had talked about earlier. All right, so let's start with our inspection program. So far in 2020, SWIM's completed 181 stormwater inspections within the Rocky River watershed. And then we also completed 2 inspections within the Black River watershed. Also in 2020, we set up a new, what we call a benchmark work order for the Rocky River watershed. And we're actually doing this throughout the service area. And what that benchmark's done is it's identified 103 assets that we found were already being inspected by a responsible parties such as ODOT, Cleveland Metro Parks, the county, Turnpike, those types of agencies. So our plan for 2021 is to implement these benchmark work orders. And the idea is instead of re-inspecting these assets again, we're going to be contacting these organizations to get a copy of their inspection report. And then this will allow us to prioritize other asset inspections on our schedule. So I'll move on to our maintenance program. So far in 2020, we've performed 33 sediment and debris removal tasks within the Rocky River. Removed approximately 664 cubic yards of woody debris, and then approximately 261 cubic yards of sediment. We've also performed 2 other projects, which was actually focused on some minor repairs to a bank stabilization project that we had done. So what we're doing is we wanted to compare our 2019 maintenance tasks with our 2020 maintenance tasks across the service area. And what we found is that we actually completed more tasks in 2020, but the removal of debris and sediment was actually less. So this is an example of a removal that we did on Baldwin Creek in Middleburg Heights. This one was actually following one of our wet weather events. So another example on Baldwin Creek. This is near Pearl and Sprague Roads. And this one was actually identified as an inter-community issue. So this blockage was actually preventing flows from moving from one community through to the next. So I'll touch on one of our small scale maintenance projects within our small scale maintenance program. And this was a problem that we identified on Echo Lake Basin, which is in Strongsville. We started noticing that a large sinkhole was forming due to some section loss on the concrete apron wing wall. So the project entailed repairing that section loss with a concrete blocker. We backfilled that sinkhole, and then we also lowered the basin water level just to get some relief pressure on that impounding structure. This dam is pretty old and it's in pretty bad shape. The basin dewatering followed some stormwater master plan recommendations as this basin was determined to provide little to no detention or water quality benefits based on their model. So I'll move into our culverted stream inspections. So in 2020, we began to increase our focus on these culverted streams data that was being sent to us from the stormwater master plan teams. So our approach has been to review all the CCTV videos and the PAC reports, and then follow up with our own inspections of the most critical issues identified by the stormwater master plan teams. Service area wide, we've completed about 68 out of the 113 culverted streams that were needing follow-ups. Within Rocky River, our inspection teams have completed 6 of the 23 assets that needed follow-up. We'll continue to monitor these identified problems and then make recommendations for any necessary repairs. So an example of one that we re-inspected under East Linden Lane in Parma. We identified some joint separation and some visible backfill within the pipe itself. So I'm going to transition now to our Labor Day storm event and give you a quick recap on that. So this is our rainfall stats out of this particular event, and kind of focus on the top and the bottom. can see on the top over the 6-hour recurrence interval, this storm generated somewhere in the neighborhood of 0.83 up to 4.55 inches of total rainfall over a 7-hour period, which equates to less than a 1-year storm up to almost a 200-year storm. And then the other one to focus on is the peak 15-minute, which generated about 0.32 up to about 0.881. So local storm sewers, they generally are impacted by the peak 15-minute rainfall total. So the storm event didn't have many measured areas of significant rainfall in that short duration. So most of the local storm sewers didn't really discharge. Our larger drainage areas like Big Creek, Mill Creek, we saw some in West Creek as well, were more influenced by these peak rainfalls over a longer duration. So most of the regional system had more elevated flows that resulted in more extensive flooding compared to our local system. So this slide shows the results of our stream gauges that we monitor. As you can see, the Labor Day event was the 4th highest recorded for Big Creek. 2020, we actually had 3 events on Big Creek that were in the top 10. And one thing to note on this is that the Cleveland Metro Park Zoo will start to flood when the stage reaches 12 feet. And we did follow up with the zoo, and they did confirm that they flooded during this event. So just a couple shots from this particular event. This is along Milligan Avenue in Cleveland on the west branch of Big Creek. This is a shot of Big Creek down at Jennings Road just before it enters the Cuyahoga. This is one of those areas that gets hit pretty hard with some of these bigger rain events. So a little summary on our Labor Day event. Our inspection staff completed about 90 observation inspections. Maintenance staff responded to about 29 maintenance work orders. Overall, we pulled out about 812 cubic yards of debris at a cost of approximately $86,000. And then during the event, we received about 18 customer service calls. So the last slide I have is comparing the March event to the September event. And as you can see, we had a few more inspections for the Labor Day event than we did in the March event. But overall, the March event, we had more maintenance projects, and we also removed a little bit more cubic yardage and debris. I think that is all I have, and I believe I'm going to be turning it over to Kevin with the Cuyahoga County EMA.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kevin Freeze. I'm the planning manager for the Cuyahoga County Office of Emergency Management. I am here to talk about our office and its role, especially in flooding events. So an overview of our office, we are split into 2 divisions, an operations branch and a training and outreach branch. The operations branch maintains the Emergency Operations Center and coordinates response activities during incidents. So, you know, a couple things to go over. Why are we preparing for different things? Why are we writing all these different plans that we do? Then what your team can do to assist us with operational and situational awareness, as well as information sharing. Next slide, please. So the perception of emergency management is either people don't really know what it is, or they think of us as the folks that come in and respond to disasters and actually bring people and stuff that we own to that event. Whereas reality is we're the ones that are responsible for coordinating, communicating, and sharing information with all of the different partners that are involved in response, and ensuring that everyone is operating in a coordinated fashion as opposed to disparate groups doing different things without anyone else knowing. So what is emergency management? We are responsible for developing emergency response plans at the county level, preparing for those different incidents that may occur, including flooding, and then responding to and recovering from emergencies or disasters, and then long-term looking at lessons learned from those incidents and how we can better be prepared in the future for future events. So we do coordination and communication is a big part of it. But a large part of what we do, next slide please, is to coordinate amongst all these different agencies. So we have contacts for every law enforcement agency, every fire department or EMS agency, every 911 call center, every school district. We have all of the mayors, city managers, non-governmental organizations and other partners. So, you know, our distribution goes to, I think, around 500 people when we send out a situation report for an incident. So it's our job to talk with all those different groups. We're also home to many large infrastructure partners, including, you know, major international companies, the airports, some major hospital systems are all located within our county. And then we have a number of federal installations as well, including NASA Glenn. And we coordinate with all of these different groups in addition to our public safety partners. So we have a lot of transportation infrastructure in the area, a lot of bridges, major port for the Great Lakes region, and a lot of freight and rail passenger operations come through Cuyahoga County because of its location in the Midwest. So what do all these groups have to worry about and think about when they're planning? Next slide, please. So we have a multitude of threats and hazards that we work to plan for and prepare for and train for, including freezing, freezing lighthouses, as we've seen in the past. You know, luckily it hasn't been recently, but the river catching on fire, although leak did catch a portion of it on fire in the southern portion of the county earlier this year. Tornadoes are something that we worry about. Flooding is something that we're definitely concerned about and is what has encouraged us to start building more on the partnership with the sewer district related to how we can plan and best use grant dollars that are available from the federal government as well as locally to maximize our mitigation efforts for flooding. So, things that have happened in Cuyahoga County over the last few decades. Heavy rains and flooding, tornadoes, more storms, blizzards, major wind events, and then regional power outages have also affected us. I'm going to focus today on the flooding. So out of everything that we've learned over the past few years with the different flooding events, a lot of it seems to be due to additional construction within different areas. And part of what we want to do is we are the point of contact for both the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities federal grant program, the Flood Mitigation Assistance grant program, the Hazard Mitigation grant program, and a number of other programs that can assist with acquisition, demolition, or elevation of repetitive lost properties. So in an effort to reduce the burden on local municipalities, we're working with the sewer district to attempt to leverage those grant dollars for various projects that are part of this, the sewer district's stormwater management plan for each of the different regions. So overall, we work closely with government agencies, so all of our different municipalities, non-governmental organizations, including Red Cross, businesses, and the public, to really try and enhance our overall response efforts and preparedness within the county. We do outreach events under non-COVID times. We can go to outreach events in various communities to provide preparedness information, emergency guidebooks, and different types of information for the public, as well as we attend meetings with different organizations to provide information on the county's emergency management program.
Correct.
So as I said, we have 2 branches. Part of our operations branch is also to support our local emergency planning committee, which is our hazmat planning committee. So they have a hazmat coordinator as well as the emergency management specialist that is partially dedicated to environmental issues. So when an incident happens, as you can see, operations takes care of a multitude of things, including our emergency operations center, which will be activated for large-scale incidents or pre-planned events that are expected to have an impact to the county. Next slide. And then our planning side is responsible for making sure that we are providing training to our partners on emergency response and coordination. We also do those outreach events I mentioned, and we also provide technical assistance and guidance for various partner agencies and communities. Most recently, we assisted just about every community with a municipal level evacuation plan for any small scale incidents that would require evacuation. So, you know, a minor hazmat spill that might need to evacuate an area, or a bombing location, etc. Next slide. So how do we coordinate all of this? We do the National Incident Management System, which is Incident Command System, and we start local and move up to the federal level. So requests for assistance come to us from various municipalities or partner organizations when they are unable to respond adequately to an incident. If we first then look at other resources within the county, and fortunately our county is a resource-rich environment in terms of public safety. So in most cases we can take care of it locally. If not, we push those requests out to our partners in other counties in the area, and also up to the state, who then pushes it up to the feds if there's nothing statewide that is available to assist. That was the brief overview of our office. I am more than happy to take questions. One thing I did want to mention is I did say we are working with the sewer district on coordination of efforts for those different grant programs. However, if any of your agencies or communities would be interested in assistance with those as well, you are more than welcome to reach out to our office. Just one thing to keep in mind is that in order for you to be eligible for those grant funds, you have to be part of the hazard mitigation planning process for our All Hazards Mitigation Grant Program, and that is coming up next year. So if you would like to be invited to those meetings, please feel free to reach out to myself or to our office main contact information as well. Any questions? So there's a question in the chat regarding training. So there's basic incident command training, so it's available online. That would be Incident Command System 100 and 200 through FEMA. They're Emergency Management Institute independent study classes. And then we host a number of trainings for partners and critical infrastructure partners. And then we also have a senior and executive officials workshop coming up in November. That will be virtual, and that's hosted through the state, so that I can get the dates for that course over to you to share with the group.
Great. Thanks again, Kevin. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Next up, next up is Kim Kodish. She's our manager of Stormwater Design Program. Thank you, Kim.
Thanks, Myring. Thanks for everyone for being here today. I'm going to go through some of the design and construction highlights throughout the district stormwater service area. So one thing, it's mentioned a couple times in this presentation about a prioritization or a ranking system, both, since the completion of some of these master plans, getting these projects into our construction plan, we use prioritization. And one of the things that we're definitely looking at from a quantifiable manner is looking at the lower priority to the higher priority here. If you look at the lower left of this quadrant graphic, we're really looking at areas, if you have an area with a low number of impacted assets, right, the buildings, transportation, and utilities, there's just a few of them with a high level of service, they would be a lower priority. An example I like to use here is a low number. So if you had 2 roadways, right, that's a low number, that had a 50-year level of service, right? We're trying to obtain that 100-year level of service, but that would be identified as a problem area, but it would be a lower priority, right? So if we move up to the upper left-hand side, we would look at that same example. You might have 2 roadways with a low level of service. So maybe there's 2 roadways that are inundated at a 2-year storm event. That would start to get into a higher priority than the last example. The next one we would look at is something like a high number of impacted assets at a high level of service. So let's use an example of a high number of, let's say there's 50 homes that might have first floor flooding inundation. But that happens at, the 50-year storm event, right? So we're starting to keep moving up. And the highest priority would be that example of, the 50 homes, but instead of a 50-year level of service, 50-year storm event that they get flooded at, maybe they get flooded at a 5-year storm event. So we're really looking at really maximizing our projects where we get that high number of problems solved that have a really low level of service. I think we remind everyone of this every WAC meeting, but it's really important to note that there are a lot of resources on our website, and specifically the Stormwater Story Map as it relates to our design and construction program is pretty valuable. If you go under Doing Business with Us and then down to the Stormwater Construction Program, that will take you to a story map. And the story map is divided into projects that are under design, under construction, or are complete. So we do update that frequently so that you can see projects that we're working on. And if you click each of those images, you can get a little PDF 1-page summary of that project and the Watershed team leader that you can contact if you want any more information on any of those projects. So let's talk about a little bit about design and construction, starting with design here. This project is kind of a success story out of our design group. This was the Stickney Creek stream restoration in the city of Brooklyn. This was a project where we both relocated the creek. We moved away a combined sewer interceptor to separate those 2 assets from each other. And we created a floodplain in this area to allow the water to pond. So this is a great image of a rain event that happened on August 28th, not one of the 2 that Frank talked about earlier, but it was a pretty significant rain event for this area. So it shows how that area filled up with water and we were able to activate that floodplain storage for this project. And in the next picture, what you see is just 2 hours later, it's receded, right? It did what it was supposed to. It filled up during the event and then it dropped back down soon after the event when it could continue on downstream. So that's been a great success of our design and construction program thus far. And I just want to highlight a couple projects we're working on in design. The first of which is a stream restoration in the Pepperloose Creek, in the city of Pepper Pike. This project was really targeted to arrest the erosion that was happening in the stream. You can see in the pictures there, we have failed gabion baskets and erosion that's impacting not only the function and health of the stream, but also some residential homes as well as some septic systems. That was designed under one of our GES design contracts. And we actually did have the bid opening last Tuesday. And the low bidder, I think the price was about $593,000. So we're moving forward with these maybe smaller projects that really do restore some of these stream segments that are left out there for us to access floodplain and increase water quality and protect assets that are around these streams. Next project that we also recently had a bid opening on was the Ridge Road repair and Rocky River tributary stabilization in the city of North Royalton. In this project, you can see that this stream channel was coming very close to the edge of Ridge Road. And so what we decided to do for this project was not just harden or fix the embankment of the road itself, but we're going to be moving the stream away from the road to, again, it's kind of like that example in Stickney, you know, you move the interceptor and the stream, let's move them away from each other. You can't move the road here, so let's move that stream away. This project was awarded, it's going to be awarded on Thursday. So we're going to get started on this project this winter. And the next slide has a couple of images about this project, you know, showing that that existing roadway is on the left of that top graphic. The existing channel is in that yellow hatched area. And again, you can see how we're moving the stream further away from the road. So we're not just moving the channel, but we're incorporating you know, natural features in this stream channel by incorporating the use of logs and woody debris along some of the outside banks, as well as opening up that floodplain to allow that water to slow down, to reduce the erosion potential, and just have a better functioning stream in this area. So we're really excited to get this project underway. Another project that's going through design right now in the city of Broadview Heights is our Chippewa Creek project near Broadview Road. This is one of those projects kind of like that Pepperloose Creek one where we have an open section of channel that has some issues going on, right? The erosion, there's an undersized culvert on the upstream end of this. There are gabion baskets that are starting to come apart on one of the stream banks. We have a sanitary sewer that's close to being exposed, again, because of that erosion along this stream stretch. So those are the things we're going to be looking at, including expanding the floodplain as well. Another design that's under our GES contract, getting near 90% design for this project, and we're hoping to bid this one out the first quarter of next year. Again, those opportunities for those open sections of stream to really establish a more natural stream function and health, reduce the risks to nearby infrastructure and assets, and create that floodplain to slow down the flows. And then here's an example of a project that really did come out of our master plans. This one was the Cuyahoga River North Master Plan, but it's true of any of the master plan recommendations for areas that have a lot of flooding. So this is in a section of Big Creek, city of Parma, in the city of Parma. We are starting a GES design task order to look at optimization of this existing upper Ridgewood Basin within the Big Creek watershed. And really this, like I said, this recommendation is coming from our master plan. We're really looking at how do we optimize the storage here to reduce flooding potential downstream, right, or flood risk downstream. It's a city-owned parcel. It's an existing basin, so it gives us a great opportunity to see, you know, how we can modify that basin to give us, you know, the best bang for our buck from a flood storage perspective. So we're just finishing negotiation on the scope and fee on this project, and design should kick off. You know, it says 2021, but we should be starting potentially next month at starting the design for this basin modification. And then moving over to construction, this is the West Creek Bank Stabilization by Sandpiper Drive in the city of Parma. You know, we talk a lot about opening up floodplain and, you know, reestablishing natural features of these streams, but sometimes it's just not possible in a lot of these highly urbanized areas. So in this case, we had to harden this bank that was undergoing a lot of pretty bad erosion. And so we went ahead and installed a wall. The wall is now complete, and we're working at backfill and restoration of this project, and it should be wrapping up here, hopefully by the end of the year. And then another type of project. This one is looking at removing debris that is in the Donebrook culvert in the city of Cleveland near Euclid Avenue. You know, the Stormwater Master Plan looked at this area. We knew the debris was there. We've been tracking it. But when the master plan finished their modeling of Donebrook, and we realized what a hydraulic restriction that debris in that culvert was having on the system, we went ahead and pushed forward with a contract to remove that debris. And we're looking at about 700 cubic yards of debris that's going to be removed from that culvert, and that will really help the conveyance of the stormwater through the system and hopefully reduce flooding or flooding potential in this area by allowing the water to be conveyed through the culvert. I think the next slide gives you a picture of what that blockage is in that Donebrook culvert under Euclid Avenue. So again, removing that material will greatly help us in conveying the water through here to reduce the flooding impacts. And it's also worth noting here that, you know, we do believe that material will continue to accumulate here. It's accumulating here for a reason, right? And so we're also looking at different locations to put in access shafts along this culvert so that in the future, the removal of this material will be easier and more cost effective. So we're moving forward with that long-term solution as well. And this is another project in Pepper Pike, kind of the little inset photo on the bottom left is during construction. This was actually, you know, Lila talked earlier about our property acquisition program. This was actually the first fee simple property that the district purchased for the stormwater program, located right under that that construction photo where you see all the gray stone there. That's where that house used to be. So this was a project that we were able to get complete, get the stream back to a more natural pattern and location, which was where that existing home was, and reestablish a lot of floodplain through this stretch of stream. So we're really proud of this project as well. So I guess that's my last slide, so I'll take any questions if there's any. Or I think at this point, I'm gonna throw it back to Myron for a couple more things and to wrap up.
Thank you very much, Kim. Any questions from our attendees or panelists?
I do not see any.
Thank you, Keith. So just a look ahead and a couple of more information pieces for you. Just wanted to remind all our participants and our community members who are present here today, we do have cost savings programs at the district where we assist our customers in their needs, and some of the needs have grown this year and will grow in the coming months as the pandemic proceeds. I have literature available that I can drop off at your offices, or we can, your residents can view our website for all these cost-saving programs. But we have the crisis assistant, which is up to $300 of sewer credit per year. Folks can apply for that, and they have to qualify for the assistance by loss of job, loss of a family member, or any other medical expenses that they might have incurred in the last 6 months. And then that's what they basically need to qualify for this program. Next. Also, we still have our homestead program, and not to be confused with the county property tax homestead program. Our homestead program, excuse me, does help customers and residents who are 65 and older or permanently disabled with a household income of less than $33,500. And there is quite a few of these folks out there, and we really want to reach out to them and make them aware of our program, and so we can assist them in their stormwater and sanitary fees that they pay monthly. And then lastly, our affordability program, our annual, anybody who has an annual income of less than 200% of the poverty level, we really want them to contact us, because we do have assistance with lowering their sanitary fees on a monthly basis. Again, if you want to take down our customer service number, 216-881-8247. Folks can call our customer service representative. They are well trained to get this information out to your residents and our customers so we can assist them in any way possible. Next slide, please. And then lastly, if you have any more questions offline, if you want to get back to your daily schedule and your work, please feel free to contact me. You can leave a message on my extension at the office, or as always, feel free to give me a call on my mobile, text me or email me. I'm more than happy to come out and assist you and your residents with whatever needs they may have, or I will direct your residents to the appropriate department within the district. And if we don't have any other questions from our panelists or our attendees, I will conclude our second Rocky River Watershed Advisory Committee meeting for 2020. Keith, any questions?
None that I see. Thank you everyone for attending today.
Thank you, everybody.